And we should be. All right, we are live. We're going to kick it off on the gram. Let's give it a second to figure itself out. How you doing, Sam? Been a week.
Yeah, we tend to have those these days.
Oh man, that is 100% true. Well, in the 2 weeks since we've spoken, we have had a couple developments. One is that your representative, Jamie Raskin, has gone all in on the idea that the 25th Amendment is something that we should be pursuing. He's got a new piece of legislation out there looking to create another constitutional body that
I
can
just
act instead of the cabinet.
I just want to note that before this, right, my Congressman Jamie Raskin was all in on the Epstein files, right? That if he could
Yep.
just sort of pull this thread hard enough, the entire thing would unravel and Republicans would come along. And before that, he was all in on getting to the bottom of what really happened on January 6th. And if we could just get enough evidence in front of enough people in the Congress about January 6th, that would be the thing that brought everything down. Which is like watching Inspector Clouseau like moving around a hotel room inspecting hairs while the murderer is next door stabbing additional people. Like, what are we doing? Anyway,
Just waved to him as he went into the past crime scene.
right. It's like
Continue
he's in
on
this
his
like
way.
who did it? What was going on? What were the circumstances? And the screams are coming through the wall from next door.
Help,
Um,
help, he's murdering me.
exactly. So we've gone from if we just get January 6th on the record, that's going to solve this too. If we just pull this Epstein file thread hard enough, that's going to solve this, to now the 25th Amendment, which requires more support from more embedded Trump loyalists who are less accountable to the people, in addition to all the votes that you need in Congress in order to impeach. The 25th Amendment requires every single vote that you would need in Congress for impeachment, plus people in the cabinet.
And like the people in the cabinet, many of them are also facing their own impeachment articles.
Yeah, and they're walking around in shoes that don't fit because they're so afraid of upsetting this president. These guys are going to start the process of removing him.
Well, and this is why Raskin has revived a 10-year-old proposal to create another mechanism or another body, right, that can evaluate the president for his ability to discharge his duties. This is part of the oath of office. I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter, right? The same oath of office I took. I say this all the time. The capacity to discharge those duties, that is a formal set of language there. And what Raskin would like to do is to create a body that can determine whether or not the president is capable of that. But here's the thing. Raskin is already part of another body of government
that can determine that, right?
That can determine that and can take action to remove him. So this is just extra steps. Andy Craig called it a Rube Goldberg machine of accountability, right? Like,
absolutely.
Completely, once again, not meeting the moment, obviously, but also a little bit insulting.
Yeah, very. I mean, we don't need an extra body to evaluate him. He's being like his actions absolutely speak for themselves. Now, it's also this obsession with just like deferring to yet another authority, right? Like, oh, if a doctor says we can do this, then we can get rid of him. If a court says we can do this, then we can get rid of him. You are the Congress of the United States collectively, and every individual in that Congress is a member of the Congress of the United States, and they should each be looking at what is within their individual power to do entirely on their own. Yeah. And if they don't cross every item off that list every day that Congress is in session, they are not doing their jobs right now. And it's that simple. right? If only a judge did X, if only a doctor said Y, if only my Republican colleagues would A, B. What can you do? And if you are not doing it, you are in violation of your oath to defend the Constitution. It's very, very simple.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to put up on the screen here this little Trump action tracker. Is everybody familiar with this? Let's get this up on the stage there. So this is the Trump action tracker. This is organized by Dr. Christina Pagel in the UK, and she has just been categorizing all of Trump's actions, anti-democratic actions, or I'm sorry, the actions that echo authoritarian regimes and could pose a threat to American democracy. Very academic speak. We're just recording things here. We're just categorizing them. We crossed the 3,000 mark. So a year and a half in, there are 3,000 individual actions that have been categorized as undemocratic. And it's a convenient site because it lists all of them in order. And it has the actions by domain. How many actions undermining democracy? Well, I'm glad you asked. That's nearly 1,000. That's 802. How many attacking science? Almost 500. So it's not like there's a shortage of actions that are undemocratic, that are undermining authority. It's also not like there's a shortage of very explicit, literal, unconstitutional actions. I mean, right now, the administration is attempting to argue the end of birthright citizenship, right? Which is possibly the plainest language amendment in the entirety of the Constitution. Like, it's just written down in black and white. and they are attempting to say, well, that doesn't matter anymore. And they are doing a miserable job at it. And fingers crossed, the Supreme Court actually holds its, what resembles a spine, just like they did with the tariffs. But it is as obvious and as plain as can be that there are endless reasons to take action to remove this man from office. And instead, like you mentioned, we have Congress trying to find someone else to do it. I was sharing right before the show, I talked with Madeline Dean's office this week, sat down with a staffer that I had spoken to almost a year ago when we started this. A constituent had requested a meeting. We went to the meeting with them. And we started talking about impeachment. And this particular staffer said, reach out anytime. Tell us what's going on. Keep the communication going.
I apologize.
So we have and we did, right? And this time, got to sit down with him in person because I'm now in DC. And they're on the Appropriations Committee. And appropriations is how the government spends its money, right? Where does this money go? What programs does it get to? What is legally and lawfully authorized for the government to spend? It is an important job.
That's how this government legally spends its money. Important.
Yeah. But you'll notice in the 3,000 anti-democratic actions, a lot of those actions are just the government putting money wherever it wants without regard to Congress. So all of the work that this office is doing to legally authorize government spending is basically irrelevant because we have an administration that just doesn't care what the legality is.
I would say at best it's irrelevant because you're actually seeing something that is more dangerous. So just to give people an example, right? Like if a couple of weeks ago when TSA started getting paid, there was no law. Like the way the government works, the most important check that Congress has on the president is that Congress controls the budget. And that means that every time the United States wants to spend money on something, Congress has to pass a law that authorizes the government to spend money. That's why we have shutdowns in this country, is because the laws that say the government should do X, the government should do Y, the government should do Z, the government should hire all these people in the TSA are separate from the laws that say the TSA is allowed to spend the money on the payroll. And a shutdown comes when Congress isn't able to get its act together, or they, are using it as a lever to check the executive, to check the president and say, we're not going to give you any more money for what you're doing, because what you were doing is illegal. And that's what's been going on. There's been this shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. If you roll back and you look at the headlines, right, when TSA agents started getting paid again, Congress didn't do anything. They didn't pass any law that said TSA agents can be paid now. If you go back, it's just like President Trump has decided to start paying TSA agents. And the media, like a lot of the news reporting, just really kind of skipped over how big a deal that is, that the president is just sort of unilaterally, all by himself, asserting that he can reach into the treasury and spend money on whatever he wants. That is a seismic shift in the powers of government. And when I say that at best appropriations are irrelevant now, this is what I mean, right? Technically, Congress controls the budget of the United States. They say we're going to spend on this. And when they say we're going to spend on this, the executive has a responsibility to spend that money.
Only on that thing,
and right, only on that thing, and I didn't authorize you to spend on this, so you can't spend on this. From last spring, this president has been asserting that he can refuse to spend money that Congress said should be spent. Right? Congress can say we want to spend money on USAID, for example, providing medical relief, let's say, to people in countries where we want to shore up their economy and to ensure that these people have favorable views of the United States, and making sure that their children don't die of preventable diseases, or that they don't die of malnutrition, is a great way to it's very cost effective. There are lots of studies, but regardless, Congress decided that this was something they wanted to do, and the president said, no, I'm not going to spend the money on that. I'm just not going to spend it. That's called impoundment. It was a big scandal last spring when it started. And the flip side of that is spending money that you have not been given to spend, or even that you have been told not to spend. At best, appropriations, which is the process of Congress deciding what it wants to spend money on, is irrelevant. Like Kira said, at worst, what the Appropriations Committee in Congress is doing right now is covering up Trump's crimes, right?
Yeah.
He has taken their power. Like imagine if your bank.
And let's be really clear. This is a constitutionally mandated power assigned to Congress. It's a responsibility given to them by the foundational document. And it is unconstitutional for the executive to make those decisions about where money goes.
And unconstitutional is becoming a very loaded word, right? But it's profoundly dangerous. It's profoundly dangerous, right? Let's look at it that way. Way back in the fall, when we had the shutdown, Trump reached into the Treasury to pay the U.S. military. And I'm not arguing that the military shouldn't be paid. At the time, Democrats were pushing for a bill that would fund just the military. They didn't like to see the troops not getting paid. They wanted to fund just the troops so they could keep fighting about these other budget priorities separately. And the Republicans in Congress said, no, we're not going to peel that off as a separate issue. We're not going to fund the military. The whole government is shut down, and we're going to argue about all of it at once. And Trump just started funding the military all on his own. And yes, it's unconstitutional, and unconstitutional is bad, but the reason is that the design of our government is supposed to protect the people from absolute power by separating power into different areas, right? Yeah. So the person who commands the military is not the same person who pays their salaries, right? And if the person who commands the military, the president, suddenly becomes the person who decides whether they get a paycheck or not, we are all in grave danger, right? We no longer control that military. They are beholden to a single person, and that is very, very scary. But what the Appropriations Committee did after the TSA, I'll have to go back and check. There was debate about whether they were going to do this or not. I forget if they did it or not, but they were talking about after Trump had decided to start paying them out of the Treasury without any authorization. They were talking about voting on a bill to pay the TSA. And that is worse than irrelevant, because what that does is it
Yep.
covers up the crime. It's as if your banker started reaching into your account and spending money, and you are too embarrassed to admit that this is happening and that you feel powerless to stop it. So as you watch your banker walking out of the bank with your money in their pockets, you say, "Oh yeah, please go out and buy yourself anything you want."
Thank you for
Right.
taking this money out of my
Right.
pocket.
No,
Yeah.
but like if the Appropriations Committee votes to fund the TSA after Trump gives them the money, it erases the fact that he's acting without them. If they follow along behind him, retroactively legalizing his actions, the power of the purse, the power to decide what we're going to spend money on, stays with the president, but they are hiding that crime from the people. Because if you aren't paying enough attention, it might look like Congress is still doing what it's supposed to do, which is decide collectively what we are spending our money on. So they can actually be worse than irrelevant if what they decide to do with their power is chase the president and make it look like the country is operating as normal when it is not.
This is an excellent point, right? Because we see this this sort of abdication of responsibility and the unwillingness to break with norms
Mm-hmm.
in many, many conversations, right? We are there in the Senate. They are unwilling to pursue, to refuse unanimous consent and stand in the way of any of the normal time lanes or the normal ways of doing business in the Senate. In the House, right, we have nobody that is willing to introduce articles of impeachment. They are not willing to use the power that they have to do their job, which is to rein in, to act as a co-equal branch of government and rein in
Yeah.
the executive branch. And instead, they're trying to pretend that they still have power and relevance. Um, and the struggle here, we kind of see it on the campaign trail as well, right? Where there is this insistence that if voters just bring them back into power, they know they are the smart people with the plan, and they know what is going to fix this situation, and you can trust them with the power, regardless of what they did with the power last time. Don't think about that part, right? But the assumption that what that faking it is good enough, that nobody can tell the difference between people that actually care and fight for this country and people that are just paying lip service to the ideals, as you say, it's a profoundly dangerous one, and it's one that undermines the the function of democracy, of the separation of powers, while maintaining the form of it. And that is a super insidious thing in a country where people don't pay attention. Like, people are disconnected from the political process,
Yeah.
because as that hollows out, how are you going to know?
Yeah. It's like the people you hear about who get fired and get up every day and put on a suit and leave the house, to maintain the appearance that they're out working, that they still have a job, um, because it's too scary to admit the truth when all that does is just sort of dig deeper. Um, this is We are very, very, very far from a normal moment, and whenever anybody even hints at discussing that with people generally, you see how concerned the Trump administration is that that approach will catch on, by how hard they come down on people, right?
Yeah.
Representative McIver from New Jersey, who insisted on her right, which she has as a member of Congress, to inspect immigration facilities without prior warning, right, is now facing a federal case that carries, I believe, a 20-year prison sentence. 6 members of Congress made a video pointing out to members of the military that their ultimate duty is to the Constitution. Their highest duty is to the Constitution of the United States, not the President of the United States. And they have an obligation to refuse illegal orders. And immediately they were all blasted with charges of sedition. And the members who had served in the armed forces, they're trying to pull their pensions away. They come down extremely hard on people to discourage these kinds of actions that really speak to what an urgent moment we are in, because I think they recognize that that is the path forward. The travesty of what's happening to Representative McIver, for example, is that she caught this federal case and her colleagues have hung her out to dry. The correct response to that is for every single member of the Democratic caucus to stand up and go out and the next day do exactly what she did. Yeah. The correct response to charges of sedition being leveled against Senator Kelly, Representative Crow, Senator Slotkin, is for every member of the Democratic caucus to stand up the next morning and do exactly what they did. Insist on your right to do this, on not only the legality of it, but on your obligation to do it. And if they fight you on that, it demonstrates that what you are doing is important.
Yeah, so the very first article of impeachment that we got to the floor, that was a mark of pride, because when that came to the floor, Donald Trump posted a little rant about it. He was real upset.
He hates impeachment. He hates when people talk about it.
Hates it. Hates the concept of impeachment is a specter for him. He brings it up all the time as this is what's going to happen after the midterms. There is, and the reluctance to use the thing that Trump obviously fears and hates to assert your influence, to assert yourself as a co-equal branch of government is mind-boggling to me. And I'll just pause on the sedition aspect, right? Because that was what was claimed by Donald Trump. These officers, quoting the law of war manual, they're committing sedition. Refusing illegal orders is like the bedrock of military commands. You do not give illegal orders. You do not follow illegal orders. At that time, right, we were just at the beginning phases of this. Of these extrajudicial killings, of these murders in the Caribbean and off the coast of Venezuela, and in the Pacific. And at the time, the same representative that brought the first articles of impeachment to the floor also had brought articles of impeachment against Pete Hegseth. This is Representative from Michigan 13. And those articles of impeachment against Hegseth named the illegal action. Mm-hmm. And it was, at that point in time, it was very clear to me, at least, that we were going to be escalating, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to be escalating our presence and military action in Venezuela. So the time to act was right then, right? That was the time to throw a wrench in the plans for Venezuela action. That was the time.
While people were still shocked.
Yeah, while they were still shocked, before it became normal, that was the time to act. And so I told the office that and received no response. And then 2 weeks later, of course, we invaded and we kidnapped Maduro, and that was that. And
the lack of urgency that the Democrats feel is absolutely galling.
It's amazing. And now here we are 6 months later or so, and there were 14 murders last week, extrajudicial killings in the Caribbean, because that's still happening. It's just not in the news cycle, right? And Hegseth is now leading a just absolutely disastrous war in Iran, which is also illegal. The lack of action at the beginning, when you have the opportunity and the time, translates immediately into additional harm that could have been avoided.
It's wild, because if you look back to January 6th, right, what they should have done, and this is not, I don't mean to relitigate the past, right? This has relevance to the present day, I promise. What they should have done is immediately after they finished, tallying the electoral votes, they should have moved immediately into impeachment proceedings. They should not have adjourned Congress. And The Republicans could not adjourn without Democratic assent in that moment. They should have insisted on staying in the building and doing their fucking job. Because at that moment, all of them had been personally attacked. Even the president's staunchest allies, Lindsey Graham, was saying he has gone too far this time. There was no question that Donald Trump was behind that. What they did was they said, we're all very rattled. We need to get some sleep. Democrats agreed to adjourn. Yeah. It gave Republicans were shocked. Republicans were appalled. You give them a week for the media machine to start working. They get their feet back under them. They get their stories straight with each other. They come back and they're ready to present a unified bloc against impeachment. And the lesson of this is, if you do not act in the moment where people are shocked by whatever fresh norm president has broken, whatever social taboo, often backstopped by a fundamental law, right? Like there are insurrection. There are fundamental laws about this shit, which is why we don't see it every day. But when you see it for the first time, it's shocking. And the time to act is then, while people are still reeling from seeing something they never thought they would see in front of their eyes. And we all know what it is. How, having had that experience, can they look at each successive thing, right? The loss of control of the budget, ripping the logos off of federal buildings at gunpoint, double tap strikes on fishing boats in the Caribbean, and think, you know what'll really improve things is if we wait a year and then try to talk to people about this shit. Yeah. And they ignore the fact that even if there's some new horrible thing that happens in a year, having slept on each of these outrages is remaking the country bit by bit. By the time the next election happens, the president will have normalized the fact that he decides who gets paychecks or not in the federal government, including armed branches. That should scare everyone. And the fact that that the Democrats in Congress do not feel the urgency of that. They do not see the need to press as hard as they can, as often as they can, as loud as they can, to remind the people every single day, because your tracker, right? 3,000 acts in 400 odd days, that's more than one a day on average. Yeah. Ample opportunity to remind people every single day of the gravity of this administration's crimes. And the way that you do that is not with a pithy tweet. It's by impeaching the president for those crimes every single time. Every single time. If you want to explain to people why these things are crimes, you cannot simply say they are crimes, not when you have the power to indict him. A district attorney doesn't come out and say, this is a crime, that is a crime. They charge somebody, right? That's how they signal what behavior they think is beyond the pale in their jurisdiction. When the Democrats do not take the time to formally articulate the gravity of our situation, they send the opposite message, that this is a political problem that can await a political solution, which is the next election.
Well, and here's something to consider, right? The last time around, there have been 2 impeachments before, right? And the last time around, there was a lot of noise about how, we are under obligation from our oath in order, we're not doing this when it's convenient, when I have an election to win or whatever. We're doing it because it matters, because this oath I took matters and the Constitution matters. That's completely absent now. That conversation is nowhere to be found. Nobody talks about their obligation to the oath. Nobody, you can dig up their old statements, but they do not say those words anymore. Adam Schiff saying that he would do it again in a heartbeat. Well, sir, it is time. It is time. We've got 300 different examples that you can impeach for. Let's do it again, right? They're not talking about that anymore. They're not recognizing their oath as a thing that needs to be upheld.
Mhm. Mhm. Not only a thing, none of them have any power if they don't honor their oath,
Yep.
right? Swearing to defend the Constitution is a condition of service in the US government. That includes the president for sure, but it also includes the Congress and the courts. If you do not honor that oath, you are ineligible for your position. And the way that the Congress is supposed to keep itself honest is by members enforcing that idea against one another through a process called expulsion.
Mm-hmm.
The House has the power to vote another one of its members out of office. We've seen debates about this now, right? It looks like, has Swalwell been expelled already?
Yeah, so Swalwell has resigned, so
Oh, he's
has
resigned. Okay.
yeah, so has Gonzalez, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, let's just pause for a moment there and be really clear about the fact that Swalwell was a known enough predator that when I started this work and I was not even anywhere near DC, the person I started it with mentioned in passing that Swalwell was a creeper. Like it was just an open, known secret. And the body of Congress knew this about Swalwell in particular, right?
Yeah.
So they had the opportunity to expel him before, but he was useful in some capacity.
Hmm.
So he has resigned, and they took his name down real quick. It was gone like the next day. Gonzalez is gone. Sherphillis McCormick also gone, accused of $30 million embezzlement, I think.
Mhm.
And now we're talking about Mills out in Florida as maybe, and these are swaps, these are choreographed, right?
Right.
They are agreeing not to tip the balance of power, which in
Which
and of
is
itself is funny because we just had another Democrat die because they can't give up power no matter
right.
what, right? It
But
is.
that kind of
Oh, sorry.
oh no, I'm sorry. Right. That kind of coordinated behavior is deeply frustrating because
Yeah.
what it evidences is a solidarity with your colleagues in office that is greater than your concern for constituents and that is greater than your obligations to the republic that you are sworn to uphold. Um, Choreographed, I'll do one for you if you'll do one for me, and all these people are people like, it shouldn't be the case that so many people are gettable like this, right? Like
I mean,
another well, but no, like another way in which like impeachment exists in our common sort of language is the concept of unimpeachable, right? Which doesn't mean Donald Trump. It means like my conduct is unimpeachable, means it's above
you
reproach,
can't get me
right?
on anything. Yeah.
Like, right, you can't like if you can dig and you're not gonna find something that you can hang a criticism on. We have the opposite problem where the government is absolutely stacked to the gills with people who could easily be removed for cause at any time they choose to. And it creates this like it just becomes another political bargaining chip,
It
right?
does
Which
indeed.
is so deeply frustrating. And the resignations, you know, if it were me, I would formalize the expulsion regardless, just because resignation hides the fact that like Congress has this power and Congress has an
Sure.
obligation to use this power and
They've done this.
focusing on the oath.
Yeah, they've done this with the impeachments as well, though. They just
Oh
wait
yeah, they
for the
wait.
people to resign or for the executive to fire it. They don't follow through with
Yeah,
the use of their power. They
right.
there is such a dedication to not acting. It is
Mhm.
kind of remarkable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's remarkable and it's unbelievably frustrating and it's so frustrating to watch this sort of wave of calculated, coordinated, like expulsion slash resignations. That's what I said. Like, hasn't happened yet. Like, I'm aware that these things are going on. I have not been following the blow by blow terribly carefully because it's not being driven by the actual actions of these people. It's
Correct.
also been folded into this, you know, bullshit calculus by a group of individuals who seem to genuinely believe, like Eric Swalwell, right, that the power they hold is theirs to do with however they please, that
Yeah.
it is not a sworn duty wielded for specific purposes. People can have lots of different ideas about what it means to support the Constitution, right? Like that's a vague proposition, right? To support the Constitution. That's why we can have political parties. Like I can have an idea about how I'm best honoring the country and pursuing the objectives, and you can have a very different idea, and they can both like reasonably be argued to be within the idea of like we're all supporting the Constitution. But we're in an age where people are doing things that flatly are not, right? It's you start to see people use the word anti-constitutional as
No,
opposed to unconstitutional, right?
no, that
There are
makes
things
sense.
that like are clearly allowed. There are things that are not allowed, and then there are things that just strike at the heart.
Yeah.
Like, if these things are allowed to persist, it doesn't simply mean that we have strayed from the sort of structure that we're supposed to be following, but if it's allowed to persist, that structure will fully unravel.
Yeah.
Taking away Congress's power to set the budget of the United States is
Exactly.
anti-constitutional. If it is not changed, the country will unravel. Birthright citizenship, I would say similarly, right?
Yeah.
The country as we all know it, the Reconstruction Amendments, the amendments passed after the Civil War, 13, 14, 15, have defined the country as we know it. And until last year, everyone accepted that that's the country we live in. Even people that didn't like birthright citizenship would argue like this is bad for policy reasons, but it's part of the Constitution, and if we want to change it, we're going to need an amendment, right? Um, if you attack birthright citizenship, that was a cornerstone of the Reconstruction Congress's vision for how we could be a country again after the Civil
Yeah.
War. And if you rip that out, if you rip the power of the purse out, the constitutional structure that we have all lived and experienced is not, is gonna crash and burn. These are the engines, guys.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about the Reconstruction Congress and the way constitutional amendments happened after the Civil War, because at this point in time, it feels very much like that is what we are talking about. If Citizens Impeachment, if Courage for Democracy brings our cohort of candidates willing to fight, willing to uphold the Constitution, um, you know, it feels like there is a need for additional amendments. Equal Rights Amendment, for one,
Mhm.
should get in there. We're going to start working with Move to Amend, which is a group focused on a constitutional amendment that limits the right of fictional entities, or fictitious entities, like corporations, and restricts constitutional rights to actual humans. What a novel idea, right? um, the the slate of, if we succeed and we are able to bring a block of fighters into Congress in a very real way, and we're in 25% of the House races. Who knows, right? We can hopefully, fingers crossed, we can do a lot there. What other amendments would you like to see? How else should the Constitution change to
Oh,
prevent the
oh
type of thing
boy.
that we're in right now? Or is
Well,
it just kicking Congress out over and over again and continuing to replace them?
no. So I mean, that's a really interesting question. I think the two you mentioned make a lot of sense to me. The idea of like institutional rights, like allowing an institution to sort of conceive of itself as a legal person in a commercial sense, and then extend that into the realm of like individual rights. That makes a certain amount of sense. I'll be honest with you, I haven't thought much about this question. I thought about it more pre-Trump um, than I have post, for two reasons, right? Uh, First, Um, I think arguing for the things that we already have consensus around, like the Fourth Amendment or birthright citizenship, feels way easier than trying to introduce new concepts in this moment that's hotly contested. And second, one of the things that is on the table right now, like supposedly in theory, what's the purpose of an amendment, right? Like, why not do it with a court case, reinterpreting existing law? Why not do it with by passing a statute? There's nothing in the Constitution that would prevent you, Kira, from passing a law, just a regular law that says that corporations do not have individual rights. You know, um, uh, at least like backstopped by a court opinion. But like, so that may not be the best example. But my point is, like, some of the things we're talking about, they're not unconstitutional. It wouldn't be as
Sure.
if, like, if you pass that law, the law would just immediately be voided by the fact that the Constitution clearly contradicts it. You pass it as an amendment either because the Constitution as already written would prevent you from passing it as a regular law, or because you want to move it outside the realm
Mhm.
of everyday politics. You want to
Part
say this
2. Part 2
this
is what we're after, yeah.
right. This is not something, right? That's what I want to get to. This is not something that we're going to have a debate about every political cycle. Birthright citizenship is great. Like, we're not going to let birthright citizenship be something that's on the table in any given election. We're going to take it, we're going to put it on a high shelf, which is
Mhm.
the Constitution. And if you want to change it, you've got to get out a ladder and you've got to get 2/3 of the states, or you've got to go through an entirely extra thing. Like, all of the, like, elections have consequences. Trump won, people. Fuck that.
Mhm.
If I run an election and I say, if voted into office, I will dissolve Congress, and I win, that doesn't mean that I have the power to do that, because the election was an election for the office of President of the United States, and the President of the United States does not have that power. If you want to dissolve Congress, you've got to amend the Constitution, and that's intentionally a higher bar. And when you conflate the two, and I'm using dissolving Congress because birthright citizenship has been drawn down into the mud, right? I want to make this really clear for people.
Sure.
When you conflate the two, when you say, well, the president promised to do this when he ran and he won, so now he gets to do it, right? You are committing a crime. Again, like that, like you are lying to people, you are misleading them, you are preparing them to accept fundamentally illegal acts.
Yeah.
You cannot run an election and say, if voted into office, I will end birthright citizenship, and then proceed to do it by fiat and say, I won the election, so this is what people voted for. That's not how it works. We
That is the
because they put it up
opposite
on a because
of
they
an
put it up on a
elected
high
official.
right.
Yeah.
They put it up on a
This
high shelf, right? Like,
this is sort of,
mhm,
turning the Oval
yeah,
Office into a throne room
into a
by
throne room, right?
creep, right? It's where
Right.
folks
Mhm. If elected, I mean,
yeah.
he basically, like, vote for me, vote this one last time, and you'll never have to vote again. If elected, I will end the republic, right? But you can't end the republic by a 51% win for a single office, because that is not the question on the ticket. The
Mhm.
question on the ticket is, who is going to be the person who takes care that the laws of the United States are faithfully executed?
Yep.
If it's going to take a hell of a lot more than that for to be able to say that there was a popular referendum on whether we should still have a constitution, and the Constitution lost. But so part two, right? Your goal with these amendments is to take these concepts and put them on a high shelf so that we don't have to stress about them in every single election, and Democrats can't come and say, like, abortion rights are on the line. You've got to,
Give me
like,
$5.
right, give me $5 and compromise on all these other things because fundamental values are at stake. They shouldn't be.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be. But one of the things that is at issue right now is whether amendments do that.
Mhm.
Right? So birthright citizenship is unquestionably part of the Constitution. Does that mean that it can't be fucked with unless we amend the Constitution? We're going to find out. The president cannot serve more than 2 terms. No person can serve more than 2 terms as president. That is unquestionably part of the Constitution. And when you said birthright citizenship is about the clearest thing in the document, I
Right.
would say that the two-term limit is perhaps the clearest. They're openly talking about Trump running for a third term.
Already
And
legislation in the book.
right,
Yep.
yeah, and media is saying, experts say, which is very different from
Ugh.
he can't do this, right? Like if he does this, it will be fundamentally illegitimate, and we will no longer be the country that we were. That's the message. That's the message here. But my point is, right now we are in a moment where amendments are not actually doing what they're supposed to do. The Constitution is not actually doing what it's supposed to do. It's not taking a bunch of these things that were decided at a very high bar. It is very hard to amend the US Constitution, and placing them outside the realm of elections and saying,
Yeah.
if we want to change these rules, we've got to have more than an election. We've got to have all these steps in place. And while the precedent stands that amendments are negotiable, that the president can just blow through birthright citizenship, and the lower courts say, well, this is obviously illegal and we're going to stop you right away. And the Supreme Court says, no, let him cook. Right? Right? We're going to let this policy exist.
Yeah.
For months. And then we're going to have a court hearing about it, and then we're going to debate it, and then in like a year, after a year of the president doing whatever he wants, then we'll decide whether or not we're going to stop him, right?
Yeah.
I
want to just go back to something
like even if the Supreme Court decides that it doesn't work this time, it's already accomplishing many of its goals. You can find, even in legal journalism for other lawyers, people using the term birthright citizen to refer to a person who was born in the United States but whose parents were not. Guys, all of us are birthright citizenships. All of us are birthright citizens. All of us hold citizenship with very few exceptions. Everyone born within the United States has citizenship because they were born within the United States, not because of who their parents were. I don't have citizenship because of who my parents were. And even if it falls in this moment, they have achieved something really dangerous by working this term into the lexicon, birthright citizen, using it the way that they use it. It's right. And getting people to think in terms of folks who were born here whose parents were born here, and folks who were born here whose parents weren't, as if their legal rights are somehow distinct. They are not.
Yep.
That debate was ended conclusively by the Reconstruction Congress, and they did it because it was the only way to solve the problem that slavery had created, which was a whole class of people living in the United States, born here, who lacked any legal rights. And we are seeing that come around now with the citizen, non-citizen distinction. You are starting to see people argue, and the Constitution is very good at this. When it says citizen, it means citizen. And when it says person, it means person.
Yep.
Any person. And they used the word person when they wanted to talk about U.S. citizens and slaves. So they like person intentionally carries these two phrases. People are now starting to introduce arguments that the word person only refers to citizens, and that that's how the Constitution should be interpreted. They are formally like they're introducing arguments that the Second Amendment should not apply to non-citizens, for example. Right.
Wild. That I hadn't even thought about that piece of it. The structure of the language carries so much within it, right? And when you have effectively like a sledgehammer in human form taking the seat of the presidency, there's the desire, or like when you're talking about the legal journalism for lawyers about birthright citizenship, this area of literature did not exist before the executive decided they needed it to exist, right?
And now, even as they report, like the Supreme Court looks likely to uphold birthright citizenship, they say the lawyer who argued it, comma, a birthright citizen herself. Like that idea, a birthright citizen?
Yeah.
There was no such phrase. There was no such phrase. a year
And
ago. Even if the court case goes down, they're going to bring another one,
yeah, of course. And
you know,
this is
and
something that
each
happens
time they
continuously,
push the
right?
idea a little further.
Yep.
Um,
And that is why we have to argue as aggressively,
mhm,
right,
yeah,
for the language and the structural components of the Constitution and say things like the powers are supposed to be separate. You are violating that tenet of the Constitution, right? There has to be as much that fight has to be fought as hard as the people attempting to redefine reality. And I want to go back to one thing that you said earlier, where you just reiterated what the job of the president is, which is to faithfully execute the laws of the land, right? Like
mhm,
that is the
yeah,
role of the executive branch. And if we were able to bring that, to remind people of that when we voted for president, right? If that was a component of the question, who is going to be better at executing the laws Congress makes?
mhm,
I feel like that could really change the way people talk about elections in general, the presidential election
yeah,
in general, right? When you actually put some criteria around it rather than who's who's the quarterback for your team, which is maybe how presidential elections get translated for a lot of folks. Um, the the execution of the laws rather than the defining of those laws or the creation of new legal foundations for laws you want to make, maybe, right?
yeah,
It's a very different question. I think we've lost that
mhm,
in our current political process.
yeah. Congress is meant to be way closer to the people, right? The government is the people's government. We, the people, it's our government. And my congressman is Jamie Raskin. He's got a house in my neighborhood. I could drive there if I want. He's hard to get a hold of. He's substantially easier to get a hold of than the president of the United States. You know, um, these are people that are meant to be approachable in our community, and then they go together in a building and they collectively decide what our government is going to do. Our government, we, the people. And the president is the agent of that government. He's a guy that we hire to do the jobs that we've collectively decided need doing. That's
Servant of the people.
that's his role. Right. And a servant of the law. And
Yeah.
the law is created by Congress. Congress writes the laws, the president executes them. That's what
It,
the executive is, right?
yeah. It's wild that it's out on an earlier discussion today. Um, somebody made a joke about how, wouldn't it be cool if we had a government by and for the people? Right? It seems almost
Mhm,
quaint to say it now. And it's really kind of amazing how going back to the actual text of the Constitution is
mhm.
grounding and relevant and also just seems like such a radical idea right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's so the amendment stuff, right? Like one of the things at issue right now is like whether amending the Constitution actually means that these ideas can't be fucked with
Yeah.
unless you amend it again. So until we enforce the document as written, adding additional amendments is less pressing for me
Yes.
personally, right? Like the
I
first
hear
step,
you.
the first step is um, imposing genuine consequences
Yep.
on, like, making it just sort of extremely clear to all of the people that have dismantled the system as written that this kind of behavior is not acceptable. and
Yeah.
and I'm not interested. A lot of people talk about retribution. I genuinely am not interested in retribution. I don't, and I'm speaking solely for myself right now, right? Like I do not want these people to suffer for the sake of suffering. But if you go back to January 6th, the fact that they never prosecuted anybody above the street level for January 6th was a license for people to try again.
Yep.
Right? The message was that if you lose an election, this is an acceptable thing that you can do. And maybe we're gonna hold your hedge people responsible if you fail to pull it off, but we're not gonna hold you responsible. And by deciding to do that, they made every future US election subject to this threat. And the only way back is to make it riskier to try than not to try, right?
Yeah.
If you win, you get to be a dictator. And if you lose, you're mildly embarrassed, right? Maybe some people at the street level that you don't care about, maybe they go to jail. There's no downside.
Yeah.
So it's not about vengeance. I don't have a personal need to see people suffer. I do need these people to be too worried to try this stuff again.
Yeah.
And if it were me, I would go after their money. Like I think a way more fitting end. Like I don't even need to see these people thrown in prison. I just think that they should all
I think
live
maybe they should
live
go
the rest of their well,
we can talk
again,
about the
speaking
explicit
speaking
accountability
solely for myself, like I think that I think that being forced to live in the United States as a poor person, having every dollar they ever earn confiscated by the government, and subsisting on the social safety net would
That'd be so
be,
good.
be way scarier
Yeah.
to rich people, honestly, than the kind of treatment that they've received at the hands of the criminal justice system, and
Absolutely.
would force them to learn why you do not fuck with the government. Right?
Yeah.
If they were dependent on the US government for their day-to-day subsistence, they would suddenly care whether these programs are cut out of nowhere.
This is vicious and I like it. I'm going to put a pin in it for next week.
Sorry.
No, I think it's great. We should talk about accountability because it's something that we have to start thinking about. The plan is to get folks in office that will follow through on it. And
their money is the tool that they have used to attack the republic, and so it must be taken out of their hands.
I look forward to hearing more about this next week, Sam. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Sorry for we covered a lot of ground today.
We did, and we reached a little far into the future. I was feeling a little hopeful when we talked about the amendments, but the accountability conversation, that is going to be one I think people are keenly interested in. So
yeah, first establish that amendments are not touchable except by other amendments, and then you can talk about the amendments that we need.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Have a great night, Sam. Thank you to everybody for being here and watching.
Thanks, everybody.
Really appreciate it. Talk to you later. Keep fighting that fight.